All right. We'll call the Senate Finance Committee meeting to order. And our first order of business is Senate Bill 64. Would you introduce the bill, please, and yourself?
Thank you very much, Senator Gray, members of the Finance Committee. Great to be with you for the first time this year. My name is Grant Bossy, Deputy Chief of Staff for the New Hampshire Senate, here to introduce Senate Bill 64 on behalf of Senator Tim Lang, the bill's prime sponsor. He has been called away introducing another prime across the street in the Transportation Committee. This bill is a straight appropriation of $3 million over the biennium to the Department of Justice to fund the New Hampshire Child Advocacy Centers. I believe this is the current funding in the current budget. This would extend it through the next biennium. Senator Lang believes this is a flag planting bill in order to establish the Senate position in favor of funding child advocacy centers in the budget. And not to presume the Finance Committee's actions, but should the committee look favorably on this appropriation, his expectation would be to bring it to the floor, pass it, and table it for consideration as part of HB2 later this spring. There are many advocates in favor of this coming behind me that can talk more directly on the benefits of this program. Thank you for your consideration of Senate Bill 64.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the senators? Seeing none. All right, this is a new year. We don't want people reading the testimony that they've provided to us in a written format. If you're going to talk about it at all, you should summarize it. You should not talk ill of anybody. You know, you can talk about their positions. You can talk about, you know, how they are acting upon a particular thing, but you cannot get into personalities or anything else. So we'll worry about the rest of the rules as we go along. Certainly there are a number of people who are representing the same organizations. I don't know if anybody else has signed in, but right now everyone on the list that said they're going to sign in is supporting the bill, and they're online. It's 153 support, 3 opposed. So we will start off at the top of the list. And again, if you can combine, you know, come up together and one make the speech and the other say, yeah, I concur, we would appreciate that. All right. So, Joy, you're the first one on the list.
Good afternoon, Chairman.
You hit the button till you get the red light.
There we go. I think I'm now broadcast. Good afternoon, Chairman Gray, Vice Chairman Ennis, and members of this committee. My name is Joy Barrett. I'm the CEO of the Granite State Children's Alliance. Also joining me today is Nicole Ado. She is our Chief Program Officer. We represent the network of child advocacy centers here in New Hampshire and operate 4 of them. They're located in Nashua, Manchester, Keene, and Laconia. Child advocacy centers respond to allegations of all forms of child abuse. The CAC model is a nationally recognized best practice in child abuse investigations, not only reducing trauma and fostering healing for child victims, but also keeping kids and communities safer by holding offenders against children accountable. New Hampshire RSA 169.3 encourages the use of multidisciplinary child protection teams made up of members of the child advocacy centers, law enforcement, DCYF, medical and mental health practitioners, and other professionals involved in the investigation and prosecution of child abuse. I want to thank you, Senator Gray, and members of this committee for your support in passing a $3 million appropriation to child advocacy centers in the last biennium budget cycle. This investment in CACs was a game changer for child abuse victims in New Hampshire and supported various investigative agencies, who you will hear from today during this hearing. The investment made by the state strengthened CACs across New Hampshire to best support 3,100 child abuse investigations brought to the CACs by law enforcement and DCYF over the last 2 years. This resulted in retaining and building staff capacity, meeting the growing demand for behavioral health and trauma therapy, strengthening medical access, and supporting mandated reporting education programs like our Know and Tell. Senate Bill 64 is critical investment in the safety of New Hampshire's children and the effectiveness of our justice system. I encourage you to support this bill and ensure that CACs can continue their vital work. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, Chairman Gray, Vice Chairman Innes, and members of the committee. My name is Nicole Ado, and I'm the Chief Program Officer for Granite State Children's Alliance. I came to this work after a 23-year career in law enforcement with the Manchester Police Department, 10 years of which I spent conducting or supervising investigations of child abuse. I tell you this because I understand this issue from a variety of angles. Thank you very much for your support of our funding in the last biennium. It's appreciated, and it has provided the Granite State Children's Alliance and our network of CACs with the opportunity to not only retain experienced, educated staff, but also to increase our staff. It has allowed CACs in New Hampshire to have a family support specialist at every CAC in every county. Family support specialists work with families after the forensic interview to provide advocacy and support as they navigate the very difficult and sometimes overwhelming criminal justice and child protection systems. The funding that was allocated to us in the last biennium has also allowed us to expand our behavioral health program. In the last 3 years, we've expanded from 2 counties to 4. In the last 3 years, we've served 398 children and families with on-site behavioral health, specifically with modalities that are specific to children who have suffered from abuse. We've kept these families and children out of our already overburdened community mental health centers. We've also provided this service free of charge. None of these families have had to apply for victims' comp, and that allows victims' comp to provide services to others who need it. This funding has also allowed us to retain our experienced forensic interview staff. We've conducted between 1,500 and 2,000 forensic interviews throughout the state every year. 80% of children who come in for a forensic interview make a disclosure of abuse. That means 8 out of 10 kids who come in and speak to a forensic interviewer provide information for law enforcement and DCYF that they have been abused. Law enforcement and DCYF use this information not only to keep kids safe, but to hold perpetrators accountable. Retaining staff that is experienced at forensic interviewing is part of the reason that we're able to be so successful with our forensic interviews. Keeping this level funding will ensure that CACs in New Hampshire continue the work that they do, not only for law enforcement, DCYF, and prosecution, but most importantly, for our most vulnerable victims of crime in the state. We urge you to support this bill, and we have given out some information prior to today. Certainly the most impactful testimony is always going to be someone who's been a victim, who's experienced our services. We would never ask a child to come up here and speak to you, nor would we expect them to do that. That's too difficult. But we do have some information in what we've handed out, which will share some stories of kids that we've served. Thank you for your time.
Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much. Chief Maher, and I don't know if Mr. Willard wants to come up also at the same time.
Good afternoon, Chairman Gray, Vice Chairman Innes, and members of the committee. For the record, my name is Peter Maher, and I'm the Chief of Police in Manchester, New Hampshire. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today in strong support of Senate Bill 64, which seeks to maintain level funding for New Hampshire's child advocacy centers. Over the last 3 years, the Hillsborough Child Advocacy Center in Manchester has conducted over 475 interviews of children involved in child abuse investigations in the city of Manchester. As Chief of Police, I can attest to the absolute critical role that CACs play in supporting our response in these cases. Child advocacy centers provide a safe, neutral environment for forensic interviews of child victims. These interviews are conducted by highly trained professionals, ensuring that the information gathered is both reliable, legally defensible, and trauma-informed. This approach strengthens our investigations and reduces the need for repeated interviews, which in turn spares children from further stress and ensuring that we meet the highest standards of evidence collection. You've already heard about the invaluable child and family support services provided by CACs, which help to address trauma and begin the healing process for those affected by abuse.
From my perspective, I cannot overstate the partnership between law enforcement and CACs. Our partnership is essential in our shared mission to protect children and hold child predators accountable. As a chief responsible for a budget, I understand the need for fiscal responsibility. Senate Bill 64 does not ask for increased funding. It asks for continued level funding, funding which reaffirms the state's commitment to the vital collaboration between CACs and law enforcement and ensures that CACs have the resources they need to continue this critical work. I urge you to support Senate Bill 64 and help us uphold the safety and well-being of New Hampshire's most vulnerable citizens. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Good afternoon. I'm Nick Willard, retired Manchester Police Chief and United States Marshal.
Just swing the microphone over towards you a bit. I would.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Should I do it over again?
No. The microphone is as much for the people who are listening online as anything.
Roger that. I started my police career in Sanford, New Hampshire in 1989, and Senator Lang was my first training officer, so I'm disappointed that he's absolutely not here. So he was my first training officer. I was looking forward to seeing him again.
Stay around and he will be here because he's introducing a bill. So.
Yes, okay, great. Chairman Gray, Vice Chairman Innes, and members of the committee, I'm here today to express my strong support for Senate Bill 64, which seeks to ensure level funding for New Hampshire's network of child advocacy centers, or CACs. The critical funding is essential to maintaining the vital services provided by CAC across our state, ensuring that children and families continue to receive the support and care that they need during the most challenging moments in their lives. CACs play a pivotal role in coordinating best practices, multidisciplinary response to children abuse investigations required by the Attorney General's model protocol of multidisciplinary response of child abuse and neglect. By bringing together law enforcement, child protective services, medical professionals, prosecutors, and other state stakeholders, CSEs ensure investigations are conducted efficiently, effectively, and with the utmost sensitivity to the needs of the child. The collaborative effort it only enhances the ability to seek justice, but also minimizes the potential for further trauma to children involved in these cases. The funding provided in the previous budget allowed CACs to offer critical services such as family support, behavioral health services, and victim advocacy. Without the level funding proposed in the Senate Bill 64, these essential services may no longer be available to children who already are navigating the devastating effects of abuse and neglect. This would represent a significant step backwards in our collective effort to protect and support the vulnerable children in the state of New Hampshire. In closing, I urge you and your colleagues to support Senate Bill 64 and to prioritize the needs of New Hampshire's children by ensuring stability and continuity of our state's CACs. Thank you for your consideration of this very important issue and for your continued commitment to the safety and welfare of our children.
Questions from the senators?
Thank you very much.
Sounds good. And the last one I have on this list is Emily. Grant, if you'd check see if I have anybody else.
Good afternoon, Chairman Gray and members of the committee. My name is Emily Garrod, and I am the Stratford County Attorney, and I am here to testify in favor of SB 64, which seeks to maintain level funding for New Hampshire's child advocacy centers. I have been a prosecutor for close to 10 years. I have been involved in hundreds of investigations into child sexual and child physical abuse. As a county attorney overseeing the prosecution of these cases, I want to emphasize how indispensable CACs are to the work we do to seek justice for victims of child abuse. Child abuse, especially child sexual assault cases, are the most difficult to prosecute. That is because child sexual abuse often happens behind closed doors and is often not disclosed until after a long period. As a result, oftentimes the only evidence we have to prove a child's sexual abuse is a statement from the child themselves. To ensure that we have the most accurate account of what happened and to prevent that account from being attacked in court, we need a trained forensic interviewer to conduct that interview of the child. Child advocacy centers provide us with those interviews. I want to emphasize The point of having these interviews conducted by these trained forensic interviewers is not to collect the most damning evidence possible, but to collect the most accurate evidence possible. Because as important as it is to hold the offenders accountable, it is also important to exonerate the innocent. Not only are CAC interviews the best way to get accurate information from children, these centers also provide these children with services which help to keep them engaged in the process and to help them heal. Make no mistake, engaging in the criminal justice system and testifying in court before their abuser is an incredible thing that we ask of children, yet it is necessary to ensure justice within this state. To ensure the child's participation in this system, it is necessary to provide them with these services to keep them engaged. And the multidisciplinary approach to this through the Attorney General's protocol is the best and proven way to do that. Senate Bill 64 does not ask for increased funding. It ensures that previous funding allocated for child advocacy centers is maintained. This bill is a critical investment for the safety of New Hampshire's children and the effectiveness of our justice system. I could not do my job without the Child Advocacy Center. I urge you to support this bill and ensure that these CACs can continue this vital work in partnership with law enforcement, prosecutors, and the families that we serve. Thank you.
Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much. Oh, Senator Barcel.
Hi. Thank you. Very quickly, do you know if the DOJ has put this in their budget?
Probably not the question for me.
My understanding that it is not currently in their budget.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Thank you for the question.
I saw some people go up to the table. I don't know if they signed in to talk on Senate Bill 64 or not. Just, all right. And with that, there were 3 additional people on the sign-in sheets that did not wish to speak, that signed in support. And as I announced before, the online was 153 in support and 3 opposed. And with that, we will close the public hearing. And as soon as the 8 is ready, we will open the next one. I didn't hear you. Yeah, no problem. No problem. But Senator Barcel.
She just went into that room. You all are.
Okay. No, just sit. Just sit. We'll have her testify in a minute. All you have to do, we're going to introduce the bill.
Sure. My name is Kate Lippman, Senate Policy Majority Director, introducing the bill for SB 113 for Senator Barcel. She'll be here momentarily, but
And read the.
sure. Making appropriations to the Department of Health and Human Services for homeless services and homeless prevention. And Senator Barcel will shortly provide you with excellent information that was written by someone wonderful.
All right, thank you very much.
Well,
Senator Khan.
Well, thank you, Chairman Gray, and sorry, I'm not able to also make this presentation to Senator Barcel, who I believe is following through with a commitment that arose from testimony and legislation from 2024.
She will be able to see it on the video.
I would be glad to cede any time that Senator Barcel would wish to.
She'll be right after you.
It's unfortunate sequence. I'll take it. First, Senator Barcel, I wanted to thank you for following through with the conversation that occurred at Health and Human Services a year ago relative to the needs of cities that are experiencing extreme stress on their budgets because of housing instability. I'll just give you the instance in Keene, but I can tell you from a conference call just yesterday with the 13 mayors in the state that the burden is significant and extreme. This last year, we had budgeted $300,000 for housing insecurity, and we wound up spending $1.2 million. That kind of extreme budget busting is the result of the end of the housing moratorium, the housing eviction moratorium that expired in the first quarter of 2023, and whatever subsidies were available up until that time. And as a result, this last year, we saw our budgets increase significantly. There is a burden required in state statute that towns and municipalities are required to provide for the welfare needs of their citizens. Who winds up in a city and is classified as a citizen, that kind of legislation and definition is still being worked out. I've seen some of the statutes or legislation that you're going to see during this legislative session. This is about the appropriation needs in order to meet these unanticipated and extreme costs and that state mandate. It's an irony that the state provides assistance to our sheltered homeless population, but no assistance to the unsheltered homeless population. And I think that this legislation would provide assistance to not-for-profits, which could include the community action programs, the 5 around the state of New Hampshire, through which distribution of housing assistance funding and to prevent evictions from housing and offer some subsidy that people who have some income could then afford housing and subsidized housing. I think that kind of assistance is just enormous benefit. It could assist thousands of people in the state of New Hampshire, and the municipalities would be greatly appreciative of whatever the legislature can do to meet this need. Be glad to answer any questions from the committee.
Senators? Seeing none. Oh, Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. I wonder if you remember, as I do, that the last couple of budgets actually cut homeless shelter funding by about $1.6 million per biennium. So while the department was asking for $24 million, we were spending just so far less than that. And at the same time, the problem was growing.
I need to yield to your expertise and others. I recall Senator Bradley offering an amendment this last year for sheltered homeless population that raised the amount to $27 million in the current year. I don't know if that actually was in the appropriation bill as an amendment and was signed by the governor. I'll yield to others who may have better information. That was a one-time funding need. It was not the intent of the original legislation, but it's where Senator Bradley thought the greatest impact could be measured. I think it was and Senator Birdsell, maybe you recall, I think it was a $6 million addition to housing,
She'll be up to testify.
sheltered housing.
She'll be up to testify in just a minute. Other questions from senators?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question of you and a request.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, is there a way that we can get a copy of all the funding that went to, of the dollars that were spent on homelessness from ARPA funding?
We can ask LBA to provide that to us.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, I don't see any additional questions, Senator Khan, so Senator Birdsell.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize. I'm running back and forth between here and judiciary. So for the record, my name is Regina Barcel, State Senator for District 19, encompassing the towns of Hampstead, Derry, and Windham. And I'm the prime sponsor of 113, Senate Bill 113. This bill provides $12 million per year to sustain existing homeless shelter beds in the state and support additional emergency shelter beds to address the drastic rise in unsheltered homeless individuals in our state. The bill provides $3 million per year for homeless prevention services and directs the Commissioner of DHHS to apply for a state Medicaid benefit for supportive housing services with the federal government. Medicaid supportive benefits saves the state and shelters money by allowing shelters and other supportive service providers to bill Medicaid for certain services rendered for their clients who are on Medicaid. The bill is absolutely critical to stabilizing the homelessness crisis in our state. Many shelters are on the verge of reducing beds to avoid closure or on the verge of actually closing their doors. It is important to note that the state funding for our homeless shelters does not come close to covering the total cost of our nonprofits, who even at this level of funding must bear the vast majority of the cost of running shelters. If we want to prevent shelters from closing and help reduce the burden on our municipalities and nonprofits dealing with homelessness on the front lines, we must pass this legislation. This funding provides an immediate impact to keep our shelters functioning while we work to increase the overall housing supply. The legislature and Governor Ayotte have made addressing New Hampshire's housing shortage a top priority, and this funding complements those efforts by addressing the immediate need of where Granite Staters will sleep tonight. New Hampshire is experiencing a homeless crisis. According to HUD 2024 Annual Homelessness Assessment Report, New Hampshire saw a 71.3% increase in the number of unsheltered homeless people in our state from 2023 to 2024. This is a 288.6% increase from 2019. And in the last 2 years, New Hampshire homelessness has increased across every single demographic, including unaccompanied homeless youth and people in families with children. Shelters across the state are full every single night, forcing them to turn away countless individuals. They lack sufficient funding and need help from the legislature to continue doing the work that they do. Homeless prevention services are also critical addressing this issue in the long term. Preventing individuals from becoming homeless is significantly cheaper for the state and for local municipalities than addressing an individual's needs once they fall into homelessness. With that, I will answer any questions or try to.
Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much. First name on the list, it looks like Mana. M-A-N-A, D-W-I-L-N, no, from Families in Transition. It could be, it could be. You know, us engineers, we're used to that block lettering, you know.
I apologize.
Hey, as long as we got you up here.
Chairman Gray and members of this committee, my name is Maria Delin, and I serve as the President and CEO of Families in Transition, headquartered in Manchester. On behalf of our staff, our board of directors, and most importantly, our clients, I want to thank Senator Barcel for putting forth SB 113. Families in Transition provides a variety of services, from emergency shelter for adults and families, as well as housing, substance use treatment programming, as well as food insecurity programming. Our adult shelter is the largest in the state. It has 138 beds. Our family shelter can serve 11 families at one time and has 46 beds. Right now, we have for an annual occupancy rate of 97%. Almost every single night, we're turning away adults at our adult shelter, and right now, our family wait list has 24 families on it. Those are the most vulnerable families living in places that are unfit for human habitation. Last year, we actually had to turn away a total of 885 adults from our adult shelter because our beds were full. In regards to the funding gap between the state funding that we receive and our actual cost to run these programs is about $1 million. Our adult shelter for our fiscal year, calendar year 2025, is running at a deficit of $720,000, and our family shelter is running at a deficit of $120,000. So $1 million has to be made up through our philanthropic efforts, basically from you and I, corporations, foundations here in the state of New Hampshire. Therefore, this bill is a critical step in making a significant impact on the shelters who are currently receiving the state grant and aid funding, which the extra money that came through from Senator Bradley last year, adding an extra $7 reimbursement rate for per bed per day, ends in June. And so our budget with that $1 million deficit is at that $27 per bed per day rate. So again, that's the importance of this type of funding and what it can do for us. In 2024, we actually supported 661 unique individuals at our adult shelter and 142 individuals in family groups at our family shelter. And we're proud to let you know that during that time, we also placed 62 individuals and 22 families into positive housing destinations. So the work that we're doing is making a difference, and people are getting housed. It just takes longer. The need for emergency shelters is great. We already know that, but it's not a long-term solution to our housing crisis. Senate Bill 113 can help ensure that shelters are funded more appropriately for the services that we're providing day in and day out to provide that necessary safety net between living unsheltered to stable housing. Once again, I thank Senator Barcel for this bill, and I thank the Senate Finance Committee for the work that you have done thus far. We do know that the work is incomplete. We have many shelters who do not receive any state funding, and if we added in all the people that are being served in the state of New Hampshire through state grant and aid funded shelters and through funding through other means, the numbers that we are serving is astronomical. So again, I'd like to urge you to support SB 113, and I am here to support you in this effort in any way possible. Thank you.
Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much. Jennifer? Looks like Chisum. Just
It's really warm in here, and I don't know what to do about it.
start by taking your jacket off.
Yeah, that requires logic.
Go ahead, Jennifer.
All right. So Chairman Gray and honorable members of the Finance Committee, my name is Jennifer Chisum, and I'm the Executive Director of the New Hampshire Coalition to End Homelessness. And I would like to thank Senator Barcel for presenting this bill, which we are most definitely in support of. Homelessness continues to be a critical and growing issue in the Granite State. So the coalition is known for our State of Homelessness report. I'm working on getting these distributed to you by the end of the week, so you should have one by then to be able to look at the data. So from 2022 to 2023, we had the highest percentage increase in the United States in our annual point-in-time count numbers. And then in calendar year 2023, a total of 6,806 New Hampshire residents experienced homelessness. So to put this into perspective, that is larger than the population of Meredith or even of Plymouth. And so if you were to take the homelessness population in New Hampshire and make it a municipality, it actually would have a larger population than 80% of our New Hampshire cities and towns. So again, to put it into perspective. Chronic homelessness has increased by over 150% since 2019. So that's people with a disability who have been homeless for a year or more. Then the point-in-time count data also shows that the number of people experiencing unsheltered homelessness, so living in a tent or their car, has nearly quadrupled between 2019 to 2024. The number of people and families who experienced homelessness between 2022 and 2023 increased by 40%, both when you look at the point in time, sort of 24-hour count numbers and the year-long homelessness numbers. And children under the age of 18 represent 1 out of 5 people who experienced homelessness in New Hampshire in 2023. This is actually a bit of an improvement. It used to be 1 out of 4. So we are making some progress, which is wonderful, but that's still too many. And one of the things that we looked at in our report, which we haven't in the past, is older adults. So that's people who are ages 55 and above. So the number of people experiencing homelessness 55 and above jumped from 588 people in 2002 to 941 people in 2023. So this represents a 60% increase. The coalition is extremely worried about this in that 1 out of every 5 people who were homeless, again, were aged 55 or above, and it's anticipated this is going to blow up because the number of older adults in New Hampshire is projected to double in the next 20 years. So it's a big problem now, and it's just gonna get increasingly more difficult. So I'm here to attest to the vital importance of adequately funded prevention and shelter programs. So given the continuing housing crisis that the state is facing, combined with a wage economy that has not kept up with living expenses, prevention is currently truly worth at least 10 pounds of cure in New Hampshire. We also need a safety net of a robust emergency shelter system that's set up to provide all of the services such as case management and supports needed to successfully help our residents stabilize, which is not an easy task with all of the economic barriers that people are facing. And in my written testimony, you'll see that I made a summary of some of those statistics for you on the second page, I believe. And so I know that you've heard from others in their testimony about the severe lack of shelter beds in the state, so I won't go into that, but I will say it's just really crucial that we continue to amply fund New Hampshire shelters that are currently receiving SGIA funding, state grant and aid, while we also determine how to bolster the shelter system to meet the total need of the state's unsheltered residents as it is exploding. So the coalition strongly believes in the power of prevention, and that shelter beds, while not a permanent solution, are a key part of the spectrum of supportive housing options needed to lift up people experiencing homelessness in their journey to stability. So as such, the coalition just respectfully would like to ask the members of this committee to consider voting in support of HB 113. And I thank you for your time.
Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nick?
Thank you, Chairman Gray, members of the committee, and thank you, Senator Barcel, for bringing this bill forward. For the record, I'm Nick Taylor. I'm the Director of Housing Action, New Hampshire. We're a statewide advocacy organization that supports increased access to housing. Our members include developers, landlords, property managers, lenders, homeless shelters, and more. We are here in strong support of Senate Bill 113. Housing and homelessness are deeply interconnected. As members of this committee know, we are facing a housing shortage, and as rents go up and vacancy rates remain below 1%, homelessness increases. And as we just heard, there's been a significant increase in recent years here, which is straining our shelter system, the ability to have available beds and provide the services needed in our communities. And any reduction in this funding will lead to increased costs elsewhere. when there are not ample beds and there are not ample opportunities. That is picked up by local welfare departments. That is picked up by hospital costs, law enforcement costs. So all of this will still exist and will be put downward pressure onto our communities elsewhere. And as Senator Barcel stated, there's long-term solutions in the work here with building more housing units, reducing regulatory barriers, speeding up permitting process. But this is about the immediate need right now, about where folks are sleeping each and every night and getting them into transitional and supportive housing long-term. So we are in strong support of this bill and would be happy to take any questions.
Questions from the senators? Senator Rosenwald.
Thank you. Do you know what the department has put in its budget in these two areas, homeless?
I would defer to other speakers on the
prevention.
exact number.
Okay.
I know they've put in prioritized need request on this, but
I know it's a prioritized need, but I just wondered what they put in the budget.
We can get it. If none of the other speakers can provide it, we will definitely follow up with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions, thank you very much. CARA Leonard, you're from the department. Do you want to speak now or at the end after the others so you can summarize anything that they said?
Whichever you prefer.
It's up to you.
So I know there's already been some questions about what we budgeted.
Well, then why don't we wait and have you wait, and then you can answer all the questions at the same time. Will? And remember, guys, that if we've already heard it, just say I concur with the previous speakers, please support, and then, we don't mind that at all.
Good afternoon. My name is, good afternoon, Chairman Gray, Vice Chairman Ennis. And thank you, Senator Barcel, for putting this forward. My name is Will Arvello. I'm the Executive Director of Crossroads House in Portsmouth. We're the second largest homeless shelter in the state after families in transition. We house men, women, and families, inclusive of children. We're also the winter warming shelter for the Rockingham County. So we're currently battling the situation where we're at full capacity. We have been for a while. And we're trying to figure out ways in which to expand our bed capacity. So obviously, with that in mind, our costs, the costs have continued to go up over the last few years, as you can imagine, with feeding about 112 individuals 3 times a day, paying, since we're open 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, that it's really costly to run a facility and everything that goes along with it. We are dealing with a situation, we have been since our founding in 1982, where most of our funding comes from the private sector, particularly individual donors. The state, and thank you for supporting us over the last several years at a higher rate, from $8 to 20 to 27 in this last biennium. But even at that rate, at $27 per night reimbursement rate, that is funding us at about 25% of our expenditure, 28% of our expenditures. So again, the bulk of our funding comes through individual donors and foundations and grants. The concern that we have in this economy, we are seeing more and more of a fatigue on the side of individual donors. So that is very concerning because we go through this every year where we're concerned about maintaining the ability to do fundraising and so forth. So this 28% support through SGIA is really critically important to our ability to maintain just level services to our resident population. We are seeing, as I think I have testified in other hearings, that our population is shifting. It's much more diverse in terms of seeing older individuals that are coming to us with healthcare and disability issues, mostly because they're getting evicted and can't stay in their apartments. So that will continue to happen over time. Currently, we have 252 individuals on our wait list trying to get a bed. So that's a bottleneck that will not get solved anytime soon. On the other end, we are placing individuals, but at a much slower pace. So you can see that where our hands are bound in a number of ways. But this funding is really critical to maintaining the system of shelters in this state. And we urge you to really support this.
Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much. Jake?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, honorable members of the committee, and thanks again to Senator Barcel for introducing this bill. My name is Jake Berry. I'm the Vice President of Policy at New Futures, which, as many of you know, is a nonpartisan, nonprofit health policy and advocacy organization. In addition to our work around substance use and health care access, we are New Hampshire's designated Kids Count organization, and we lead the policy work for the New Hampshire Alliance for Healthy Aging. All this to say, at New Futures, we support health and well-being across the lifetime, and we are here to offer our strong support for SB 113 as it would support the well-being of all the populations that we aim to serve. You've heard the stats. The rates of homelessness are up in our state in nearly every age and demographic group: children, families, older adults, individuals with substance use and mental health issues. Each of these groups has seen double-digit increases in homelessness over the last year, with some rising as much as 40% over the last 4 and 5 years. Our homeless shelters, as you've heard, are doing the best that they can to serve these individuals, but the fact is that they need help. The daily reimbursement increases that were approved last year as part of SB 406 don't cover the shelter's operating expenses, but they are helping our shelters serve more people in need. This funding is needed now more than ever, and maintaining this funding as proposed in SB 113 will not only save lives, and it will save lives. It will save the costs over the long run by preventing longer hospitalizations and further criminal justice involvement that's often known to be associated with unsheltered homelessness. Excuse me. I can't imagine a better use. I know that we're facing a budget crunch. I can't imagine a better use of these funds, or a more fundamental responsibility of our state to care for our friends and neighbors in need at the time they need it most. So with that, we ask you to support this bill, and I'm happy to take questions.
Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sam?
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Sam Hawkins. I'm the Public Policy Assistant at NAMI New Hampshire, the National Alliance on Mental Illness. NAMI New Hampshire is a nonprofit grassroots organization whose mission is to improve the lives of all people impacted by mental illness and suicide through support, education, and advocacy. On behalf of NAMI New Hampshire, I'm here today to speak in support of Senate Bill 113. In relationship to the supports and services this bill provides funding for, I wanted to highlight the key relationship between housing stability and mental health. As a critical social determinant of health, having stable housing is an important protective factor in supporting good mental health for all people, but for those with a mental health condition, it can also critically aid in their recovery. Further, a lack of stable housing can contribute to stress, anxiety, other symptoms of poor mental health, while at the same time, having a serious mental health condition can make it difficult to get or stay housed. We can see the impacts of this directly, as about 1 in 5 individuals experiencing homelessness in the U.S. have a serious mental health condition. Without access to the proper supports and services this bill provides funding for, individuals experiencing homelessness in the Granite State will likely see their mental health decline, the condition worsen if they have an existing mental health condition, and other adverse outcomes such as hospitalization or incarceration. SB 113 provides crucial funding to support the Granite Staters experiencing or at risk of experiencing homelessness, including those who may have a mental health condition. We thank Senator Barcel for filing this bill, and we ask that you please support it. Thank you for your time.
Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much. All right. We also have the second CARA from Home for All.
Dear Chairman Gray and members of the Senate Finance Committee, thank you for your opportunity to address Senate Bill 113. My name is CARA REENHISER, and I'm the Executive Director of the Home for All Coalition, a partnership of over 90 individuals and organizations in the greater Seacoast working to ensure homelessness is rare, brief, and non-reoccurring, and that affordable housing opportunities exist for all our neighbors. On behalf of our coalition, our partners, and those that they serve, I'm here to express our strong support for Senate Bill 113 as an essential step in addressing the growing rates of homelessness in our state. As you've heard from the New Hampshire Coalition to End Homelessness, New Hampshire has experienced the largest percentage increase in its 2023 point-in-time count. Senator Birdsell noted that the 2024 numbers also show that this is continuing to worsen, with chronic homelessness up 18%, veteran homelessness increasing by 28%, and unsheltered homelessness increasing by as much as 71%. We also know that the point-in-time count has many limitations, one of which being in the coldest winter months, if there's ever a time where somebody who's unsheltered is going to do whatever they can to find shelter with a friend or couch surf, it's probably that time. So those numbers are very much the floor, not the ceiling. But they are consistent with broader trends. In 2024, housing-related and homeless-related crises dominated the reasons why calls to 211 were made, with over 10,000 referrals for housing, homeless shelter, and rental assistance. Of the top 10 reasons why someone visited 211's website in 2024, 8 were related to homeless services, shelter, below-cost housing, and other things to ensure housing stability. And these numbers are not just statistics. They're individuals, they're families. For some of us, they're our neighbors who are really struggling to survive amid dire hardship. And we know that investing in short-term solutions like shelter may not be what many feel as a priority, but they're a critical part of our housing continuum and provide a safety net for individuals who are in crisis. Yet our shelters remain continuously underfunded and overly dependent on private donations to sustain very basic operations. Well, last year there was a supplemental budget amendment to help shelters keep their doors open and maintain capacity. Many providers are still struggling, some of which are covering half of their annual operating budget from private donations. And this heavy dependence on contributions from New Hampshire residents is a problem. It creates year-to-year uncertainty for shelter providers. It limits their ability to plan effectively, expand capacity when needed, and deliver consistent services to those that need them. With the need continuing to grow, we simply can't afford to reduce our existing shelter capacity. Without this consistent shelter capacity, we see us resort to costly alternatives, with welfare departments paying up to $400 a night to hotel families when there are not shelter beds, and hospitals incurring up to $1,600 a day when individuals are medically cleared for discharge, but there's nowhere to send them. In addition to needing to maintain our shelter capacity, we know that preventing homelessness in the first place is one of the most cost-effective ways to be economically sustainable. And so while DHHS administers the Housing Stabilization Program, we've seen that that program has been extremely effective. We've also seen that that program routinely runs out of funding about halfway through the year. And ensuring that there is ample funding to operate this program year-round to meet this need is important and is another way to reduce the long-term costs for both our municipalities but also our taxpayers. And so we ask you to support this legislation for the thousands of Granite Staters who need your help. Homelessness is a solvable problem when there are effective policies that are paired with meaningful investments, and a vital step in addressing this issue for our state. So thank you very much.
Questions from the senators? None. Seeing none, thank you very much. Looks like Marcy, is that right?
Good afternoon. I'm Maurice Warble. I'm the CEO of the Front Door Agency located in Nashua, New Hampshire. And I first want to thank you all for the tireless work that you do each and every day for all the citizens of our state. And I am a proud supporter of Senate Bill 113. The Front Door Agency has recently celebrated its 38th year, providing a holistic approach to break the cycle of poverty by assisting families and individuals to stabilize, transform, and become empowered to ultimately achieve sustainable independence. We offer 3 main programs: a transformational housing program for single moms with young children, a permanent supportive housing program, and a housing stability program. In Nashua, the median cost for a 2-bedroom apartment right now exceeds $2,300. This represents an increase of 38% since the year 2020. We have literally seen hundreds of families walking through our doors each and every day with new leases where their lease amount has increased hundreds of dollars in literally overnight. Last fiscal year, our housing stability program received 527 applications for assistance relating to rent, security deposits, and utilities. During that time, over $300,000 was provided in direct assistance just from our agency alone, serving 172 households. From July to December of 2024, we have already received 233 applications totaling $534,000 in assistance needed for rent and utilities and security deposits. And please keep in mind that our program is actually closed 2 weeks of the month because of the sheer demand for our services. In the last 2 years, that represents a 240% increase in the number of requests. I also want to stress that the majority seeking assistance from us are the working poor. Many of them are employees of social service agencies, bus drivers, and the service industry. The rental rates have become out of reach for one-income households, especially a household that has to rely on childcare as well in order to work. These funds are imperative not only to help our families facing homelessness find a safe place to live, but it also affects our local businesses. Having a place for businesses to refer employees who are struggling that can help them so that they can stay in the workforce is important. And when someone is struggling to meet their basic needs, it affects their work, their health, their education, the entire family, and the economic consequence that far exceeds this bill amount. I also want to share that the Greater Nashua Chamber of Commerce is also in support of this bill, as homelessness also affects the local businesses in our community, and housing is a top priority for the Chamber as well. So I'd like to applaud the legislature for making housing a priority as well, and for this bill, particularly SB 113, to address the complex issues of housing and homelessness. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you. Is there anybody else on the second sheet? Because we'll get Ms. Leonard back up here. Ms. Leonard?
Good afternoon, Chair Gray and members of the committee. For the record, I'm Kyra Leonard. I am the Finance Director for the Division for Behavioral Health and the Division of Long-Term Supports and Services at DHHS. So the department is here to provide information on SB 113. So I'd like to thank the sponsors of the bill for recognizing the critical importance of shelter services and homeless prevention. So Section 1 of the bill includes $12 million for homeless shelters. So currently in our agency phase budget that we submitted, we have $10 million over the biennium, $8 million for shelters and $2 million for cold weather shelters, and specifically $1 million each fiscal year for the cold weather and $4 million for each fiscal year for the regular shelters. In addition, we also included $2.5 million per fiscal year as a prioritized need within our agency submitted budget, and that's to maintain the rates that we currently have with our contracted providers. The other component is the $3 million for prevention. So this could expand the Emergency Solutions Grant Prevention and Housing Stabilization Program to address existing unmet need. And then the other component of the bill is encouraging the renewal of the State Plan Amendment 1915I, and so that's already been fully implemented. And we're currently approved through June 30th, 2027, and our intention is to renew at that point, and we'd have to submit the renewal application in December of 2026. So we don't see fiscal impact to that aspect of things because we're currently already doing it. There is technical assistance that we've been able to access that will potentially provide further insight to if like potential expansion there, but in that case, we wouldn't know the impact until probably the following biennium. And then the other thing to address is that with the bill currently, it doesn't have the fiscal note associated with it, but we will be providing that shortly. And it would say the proposed legislation would require us to have 2 positions in order to provide support for contracting, programming, and invoicing, like the grants management, monitoring, invoicing, program support for the homeless services funding. So that would be one position at various like between 93,000 and 100,000 across the fiscal years outlined. And then we would also be looking for like a business administrator, so a financial support position that would be needed to handle the contract management, fiscal contract management of the positions. And that would be 78,000 in like 26, growing to 84,000 in 2028. So we anticipate that the proposed legislation, the positions would come from those costs or would come from those appropriations. So I'm happy to take any questions that we have.
Senator Barcel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks for taking my question.
Mm-hmm.
Can you repeat the numbers in the very beginning? You said 10 million, and what was the other one?
Yep, so we have 10 million in our budget, and it's split up where it's 8 million for our regular shelters and then 2 million for the cold weather shelters. And then that's across the biennium, so just split them in half and you get how much we put in each fiscal year.
Okay.
Yeah.
And follow-up?
Yes, ma'am.
And in your aspect of the budget, does it have the 2 positions or do you need it?
It doesn't currently have the 2 positions. So
are you planning on putting those in there?
It would. We currently did not ask for the positions. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Additional questions from senators? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
In addition to the people who testified, there were 2 that signed up in support here at the State House and 81 online with 3 opposed. So with that, we'll close this public hearing and we'll open the next one in just a couple of minutes. So did you get a chance to?
Yeah, I did. Right. So, see you both.
Yeah. That's the most important. Nice to meet you. I'm out. A lot of the info you've probably seen, but how you doing? I didn't think so.
Yeah, it's right here. I'll grab it.
Yes, very much. We'll call the hearing on Senate Bill 1514. Need to have the prime sponsor introduce the bill.
Well, thank you, and good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I'm not here too often, so I appreciate the invite. For the record, my name is Senator Donovan Fenton. I represent District 10, and today I am introducing Senate Bill 114, which makes appropriations to the Department of Health and Human Services to support community and transitional housing through community mental health centers. This bill seeks to make important strides in expanding community housing options for individuals suffering from mental illness. It is a bipartisan effort aimed at addressing the housing crisis for one of our most vulnerable populations, all while maintaining a focus on fiscal responsibility. As you may know, one of the key elements of the Department of Health and Human Services Mission Zero is to ensure robust community housing programs for those struggling with mental illness. This is a crucial piece to preventing long-term hospitalization and ensuring that individuals can be successfully discharged into supportive communities. However, the current funding is insufficient to expand these critical services, and in fact, some programs are at immediate risk of closure. To address this urgent issue, the New Hampshire Community Behavioral Health Association is proposing a three-part approach, including one-time capital funds of up to $50,000 per bed to support 30 to 40 beds in stabilizing or expanding housing, and this would have a one-time cost of $1.5 million. A general fund appropriation for community supportive housing programs of $1 million per year designed to stabilize existing supportive housing programs. These programs serve adults who can manage most daily living tasks but require assistance to live independently in the community. Unfortunately, the losses across the system for supportive housing exceed $2.5 million, and this appropriation aims to help offset those losses. And finally, with a modest investment, we can propose increasing the current below rate of $278 per day for certified community residents to a more sustainable $350 per day. The adjustment is crucial to covering the costs of operation of these programs. The general fund cost for this increase is $500,000 per year, which would leverage an additional $500,000 in federal matching funds. That was a lot of numbers I threw at you guys. I apologize, but you are the finance committee, so I'm sure you're used to it on a daily basis. But, I just want to say, it's not just about the numbers, it's about the people. It's about ensuring that those who need helping hand are not left without hope. And it is a cost-effective investment in our community that will yield life-changing outcomes for individuals while addressing a growing public health concern. And I'd also like to note that in her inaugural address, Governor Ado underscored her commitment to prioritizing mental health this year, and I couldn't agree more. Mental health is an issue that touches every family and every community in our state. Senate Bill 114 is an essential step toward addressing this need. And by supporting this bill, we are not only aligning with the governor's priorities, but we are also affirming that mental health is health and must be treated with the same urgency and commitment. I'd like to note that we did request an amendment for the bill to tweak some numbers. The intent of the bill remains the same, and I believe the amendment will better reflect an effective and realistic solution. So I hope you enjoy me in supporting this critical legislation. I'll take any questions.
When should we anticipate that amendment?
So we should have the amendment today. I'm not sure if it was delivered out yet. I haven't seen it yet. Well,
questions from the senators?
I'll get it to you. I'll get you guys a copy.
Seeing none,
Tough crowd. Thank you guys.
All right. I'm gonna chastise all the audience. You did a terrible job in the last bill. There was repeat after repeat after repeat after repeat, okay? Don't read your testimony, summarize your testimony. If you've given me written testimony, trust me either to vote with you or to read it, okay? So, we'll get down through the list. Again, I'm gonna do the department last unless they wanna go first. And then we'll go with, I guess, Lisa.
Good afternoon. My name is Lisa Madden. I'm the president and CEO of Riverbend Community Mental Health, and I'm also the vice president of behavioral health for Concord Hospital. I'm here representing the Community Behavioral Health Association and talking about the importance of this bill. I won't reiterate everything that the senator said. It was a fantastic summary of what our ask is. I'll just want to remind people that the urgency around this is very much focused on the need to have people get out of New Hampshire Hospital. We have some really clear information. For example, on November 12th of the past year, out of the 174 beds of people that were in New Hampshire Hospital, 99 of them were clinically able to leave if they had somewhere to go. And so this housing bill is an effort to try to sustain that continuum of care where we can have the strength of supported housing as well as acute care and independent housing as well. So the three levels that we're asking for is, again, to sustain the ones that we have that are at risk of challenge of sustainability. Riverbend invests almost $900,000 a year in two residential programs, and you have Manchester Community Mental Health that invests about $670,000. So we are really needing to be able to have some support to continue our support of these programs in the community where people are entitled and deserve to live. I'm going to defer my time to some colleagues and some residents who have joined us today to be able to talk a little bit about that programming. Any questions I may be able to answer?
Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
We have two other people from Riverbend up, Rebecca and Jonathan.
So I'm going to first bring James with me, that's okay? As his is one of the stories that I was going to tell you folks today, if you wanted some support to do that. So, my name is Rebecca. I'm the program manager for Millhouse in Bosquen, and I work with Riverbend. I've been in this field for 36 years, and I've always felt that our residential programs were underfunded and underutilized, and the fact that this is a way we can keep people out of the hospital, which is a very costly option for folks. At Millhouse, our residents have their own individual apartments, but they are able to have support from mental health professionals in our common areas and with things such as their medications. I'm trying not to read this because you told me not to. So it helps people to remain independent as possible, and it actually helps them to gain skills they need to go back out. We have folks that have gone back out into the workforce part-time because of the skills that they have learned with us. I say that learning skills, it isn't actually that they're learning the skills. What they're learning is how to handle their mental health symptoms in order to be able to do these skills. So I have permission right now to share from two residents of background and their stories. The first resident that I want to talk about is a 50-year-old female who's been receiving services since she was 15. She's had numerous admissions to New Hampshire Hospital over the course of many years. The following is a quote from this resident. I feel like a frightened child. I've felt like a frightened child. Living at Millhouse has made me realize I have coping skills and how to use them. I like having my own space, but I can come to the common area to be able to socialize with my peers. And my sister tells me she's seen a big change in me since living here. This resident has not been in the hospital for over 1 year. She credits the support she receives at Millhouse and the connection she's developed to the other residents with helping her maintain her symptoms and to feel valued. Jim is here with me today. He's a 66-year-old resident of Millhouse, and he's been involved with the mental health system since he was 19 years old. He's had numerous hospitalizations over the year. His social anxiety has prevented him from forming lasting relationships with people, and it's been difficult for him to do things like go shopping. His quote for me was, isolation versus socialization. Since I moved to Millhouse, I've not needed to be hospitalized because of the support I get here and the friendships I've made with the other residents. I feel a sense of empowerment here. If I have something to say, I'm able to say it. Medication support is a big thing for me. Having the support to take it in a consistent way has made a big difference for me. Being at Millhouse has changed my life. I recently went to Boston to visit my daughter and grandkids. If I'd never learned the coping skills that I have, I never would have gotten on that bus. Living here has taught me how to handle my anxiety. I think a big part of what we do in supported housing is helping people to create that community and that sense of feeling valued and an important part of their life. This story, Heather's story, and some of the others that we'll share later today are the reason that I believe that supported housing has such a positive impact. I ask for your support with this bill, not only as a Riverbend employee, but as a resident of the state of New Hampshire. I believe that the increased funding to support housing will not only provide quality care, but it will reduce costs by reducing the use of more expensive services like our emergency rooms and our hospitals. I'm asking you for your support with this bill.
Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much.
And I'll give you guys this so that it's a little, you might understand a little more. I apologize.
That gentleman right there will take it from you.
Okay, thank you.
Jonathan, did you have additional comments?
Is it okay if I stay up here with him? Yeah. Okay.
Stand.
Yeah, you're good. You got this.
Yeah. Hello, my name is Jonathan Day. I reside at Millhouse, Boston.
Scoot the microphone closer to you, please.
My name is Jonathan Day. I'm a resident of Millhouse. This letter is a testimony in support of the Senate Bill 114-FN-A. Prior to me coming to the residential housing, I was battling thoughts of suicide and self-harm to the point of using emergency services very frequently. I was in a very, very dark place, a place where I hope to not see too many people go. Having 3 years of ECT and living in residential housing without question has saved my life. I would not be here today if it weren't for those programs and treatments. Help and support are always close by in the house. We are, in a sense, a very large family of people who need support for daily living. The employees here try to do their best to be of help, and we are never alone. I am a lifelong resident of New Hampshire who has been positively affected by this service, and I'm asking that you support the bill, Senate. Bill 114-FN-A. Thank you.
Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much. Thank you. Sam?
Thank you again, Chairman, members of the committee, for the opportunity to testify today. Again, for the record, my name is Sam Hawkins. I'm the Public Policy Assistant at NAMI New Hampshire, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and on behalf of NAMI New Hampshire, I'm here today to speak in support of Senate Bill 114. I concur with and will not repeat the testimony of prior speakers who addressed the importance of these programs in addressing the ED boarding crisis here in New Hampshire. This crisis is a key priority for NAMI New Hampshire, and despite the great progress made through the collaborative Mission Zero initiative, there's more work to be done, as just yesterday there were 19 adults waiting in an emergency department for inpatient psychiatric care. New Hampshire must ensure that there is a wide array of community services available to meet the needs of individuals living with a mental illness, including these housing programs. And for these reasons, we ask the committee to support Senate Bill 114, and thank you for your time.
Questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much.
You.
The department?
Thank you, Chair and members of the committee. For the record, I am Carolyn Lewis, Bureau Chief of the Bureau for Mental Health Services for DHHS. The department is providing information today relative to Senate Bill 114. The department would like to thank the sponsors of the bill for their interest in growing and sustaining housing options for those experiencing behavioral health challenges in our state. Housing is a key component of our service array and has been a part of the success of Mission Zero to reduce emergency department boarding by being able to have a place for people to transition to after their stay at New Hampshire Hospital. The department recognizes the importance of housing and is supportive of efforts to increase or expand housing for individuals in need. We worked with advocates and sponsors on a similar bill last session, Senate Bill 410, which was laid on the table, and were able to make the needed adjustments for the department to implement the bill. We are confident that we can work with the advocates and sponsors again this session to make the bill the most effective to implement. Thank you.
Questions, or did you want to say anything?
Not at this point. Well, I'm here for questions.
All right, questions from the senators. Senator.
Thank you, and thank you for taking my question. Is this in your priority needs for the budget as well?
This is not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Oh, Senator Waters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. An imponderable, but is there any sense at this point from federal HHS whether or not this match program funding will be sustained? Was this one of the unknowns?
The match program for.
You don't have.
The 50% federal match for the Medicaid, for the rates, Medicaid reimbursement rates.
Oh, so that would be, yes, that would be Medicaid, and it's standard Medicaid matching. We have 50%.
We'll see. Thank you. Okay.
Additional questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Anyone that didn't sign up wants to speak? Not seeing any. There was 6 additional people who signed the list today that support the bill, did not indicate they wanted to speak. And online, there were 19 in support, 0 opposed. And with that, we'll close the public hearing and we'll open the last one of the day in just a couple of minutes. I mean, I gotta go find it again?
You got it.
There.
This one looks easy.
Yeah, right. Go ahead, Senator, introduce your bill.
Yes, good afternoon, committee chair and members of the committee. I'm Dan Innes, representing District 7, and I hail from Bradford, New Hampshire. I'm here today as the prime sponsor of Senate Bill 117, which would appropriate $1 million in the next biennial budget for the state's online on-demand tutoring program. The program is run by the Department of Education, or for the Department of Education, by tutor.com. I believe they're following me with their testimony. The program started 3 years ago with ARPA money, of course, $3.7 million for elementary and secondary school emergency relief funding. Funding helped to start the program in New Hampshire, which is available to every student statewide, including public, private, homeschooled children in grades 4 through 12 and online adult learners. In fact, every one of us on the committee has at least 2 school districts in our Senate districts using this very program. In my case, it's Hillsborough, Deering, Franklin, and the Tilton school districts, as well as the Tilton School. I believe that Senators Carson, Birdsell, and Rosenwald can boast of having every public school in their Senate district using this program, along with some private schools. The program has seen significant growth each year and will continue to see its use increase should the program continue. Good news is the annual cost to run the program going forward will be much lower than it was, $500,000 per year over the next 2 years. So the bill appropriately appropriates $1 million necessary for the Department of Ed to continue to make this program successful statewide. Department of Education will also speak to the bill. I'm happy to answer questions, but I believe the folks following me will do a better job with the details, perhaps. But I do encourage you to give this a good hearing and to consider continuing the program.
Do the senators have any questions, Senator?
Thank you very much. Thank you for introducing this. Do you have any thoughts about appropriating money, taxpayer money, directly to for-profit companies instead of letting the free market work its free market way?
That's an interesting question. One could argue that this organization was selected in sort of an open process, and we're continuing on with them based on their performance thus far. I do appreciate the free market argument, though, as you might guess. But I think the Department of Ed can probably address this more thoroughly than I, and can talk about how we got to where we are and why this program makes more sense going forward than some others might. Are there other programs you're aware of, Senator, that maybe, do the same thing or better?
Well, right now, we're
It's
not
my
in that
testimony.
big
I understand. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wondered if I'd get away with that.
Back and forth isn't going to get there.
I tried.
You
Thank
may
you.
ask a follow-up question. Yes, Senator.
I'm trying to get some clarity on this because last year, the majority leader made the case that any company owned by Chinese nationals is by Chinese law owned by the Chinese Communist Party. And since this company is owned by Chinese nationals, do you have any concerns about the Communist Chinese Party having influence over children's education in New Hampshire?
Well, I think there are a couple ways to look at this. And one with this program would be simply measure performance. Is it working? Are students doing better in their classes? I find it exceptionally unlikely this is going to be used to somehow indoctrinate our children into thinking like communists. I just don't believe that will be the case. And this is very different from something like TikTok, with algorithms that drive information and content to our young people that maybe we don't want them to get. This is controlled by our own Department of Ed. I have infinite trust in them and their ability to make sure this is done right.
One final, if I could. Are you concerned that the company that owns this also is an investor in the parent company of TikTok?
I'm not concerned with that. They're separate operations, and the fact that they're an investor doesn't mean that they're pulling the TikTok algorithm into the tutoring.com platform.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional questions for the senator? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
From tutor.com, Lauren.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Vice Chairman, for sponsoring the bill. I appreciate the opportunity to come and present to you today. My name is Lauren Lobdell. I'm the Vice President of Customer Success at Tutor.com. I have been at the company for 15 years. My team is primarily responsible for working with the Department of Ed and the SAUs and other member schools in the state to actually implement and roll out the program to students and parents. I can give you a summary here. I would like to sort of address kind of at the top here some of the questions that came up, though. I do want to emphasize that Tutor.com was incorporated in New York City in 1999. We are an American company, and we are subject to American laws. We do have a financial investor, but they are not an operational investor. That does not have any interaction with our day-to-day. They have no access to our security systems. When we were acquired by this company, We actually pursued a regulatory review process with the federal government through CFIUS, and they reported and found there were no national security issues with our organization. We have a binding national security agreement with a whole litany of national security and data protection policies in place, which I'm very happy to provide additional information on. In addition to that, and some of the department representatives can speak to this, we signed data privacy agreements with every school that we are working with in your state. That is a New Hampshire-based data privacy agreement to protect all of your student data. There is no way our parent company would or could get access to any data. I can't even give personal data to the Department of Ed. So I just wanted to address that at the top, and certainly happy to answer more questions on that. Just kind of on to the good stuff and why we're here today. I'm here to represent the company in our strong support of SB 117, which would allow our company to continue working with the Department of Ed and the member schools that have chosen to participate, as well as serving students who are not in schools that are participating through some of your other programs, homeschool populations, private schools, and education freedom students as well. Currently, we are supporting students in grades 4 through 12th and your adult education students with on-demand online tutoring that is available 24/7 to your students. The way that they access the service is twofold. One, we've created a self-registration website that your students who are not with a school that chose to participate with the program in an official way can sign up with parental consent to access the service. And then we also have direct integrations where we partnered with each of the schools, many in your districts here, to actually be embedded within the systems that the students are using for their coursework. So there's kind of two ways that your students can get access to this service, and it is no cost to the students or the schools or anyone who participates. It is funded through the Department of Education. We're incredibly proud to have supported this program. Just to give you a little more background on tutor.com, again, we were founded in New York City in '99. We've worked with institutions across the country for 25 plus years, including public libraries, K-12 schools and districts across the country, higher ed institutions, including in the state of New Hampshire, southern New Hampshire. We work with 8 statewide programs, so other states that have vetted and approved of this as a resource for the constituents of their states. And we are also proud to support the Department of Defense in supporting this program for all military personnel and their families. And I can assure you all of those agencies and institutions put us through rigorous standards and vetting on behalf of their patrons and students and constituents. Just in terms of the service itself, again, we offer the core service being tutoring, 24/7 online access to students anytime, day or night that your students need help. We can connect them to an expert tutor who we have vetted to get them the help that they need in that moment on homework, on essays, on anything in between related to their academics. We vet all of our tutors. We have 4,000 tutors who work for us, and they are all put through a very rigorous process to ensure that they have the subject matter expertise and the ability to support your students in a safe learning environment online. As we said, we partnered with New Hampshire for the past 3 years, and in that time we have been able to get over 100 of your schools and districts to participate directly working with us, and we've established really strong relationships to help support the awareness of this program. It continues to grow each year, which is one of the reasons we're here to request funding, is we've just kept building more and more momentum, and we would like to continue building that momentum in order to ensure your students have access to these essential resources. One other thing I would mention is we have a lot of educational content, including test prep for the SAT that is built into the platform that they access for tutoring. So they also have services that can help them with these college-bound assessments that can retail at hundreds of dollars for family members. So I think overall, between the live tutors that we provide and the educational resources, we're saving New Hampshire families and, of course, the schools themselves a lot of money that they would have to put out otherwise for retail products. The initial investment over the past few years was funded with ESSER funding. We had a lot of startup costs to roll this out across the entire state, including building a new website for you and implementing with hundreds of institutions. We've hosted awareness parties like pizza parties and ice cream parties to get some enthusiasm and excitement about the program. So now that we've passed those startup costs and awareness of the fiscal situation in the state, we are able to bring the costs way down while keeping that same high level of value on behalf of your institutions. So I think with that, I'll sort of leave it there and see if there's other questions that I can help address.
Questions from the senators. Senator Waters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for your testimony. In the graph here of students, would you have information of how many discrete students that represents?
So that's a usage graph of tutoring sessions. We certainly can provide access to the unique number of users. We don't have that in that, but we can provide that as a follow-up.
And then, if I may follow up, do you have reporting to the Department of Education or, analysis of results and so forth that you've provided to the Department of Ed?
Yes, I think that Melissa from the Department of Ed may be able to speak to this. We provide aggregate data on a weekly basis to the department to see how the activity is going at the various schools and also the sort of self-registration program. In terms of impact and efficacy, I think some of the other witnesses, my friend here, will speak to that a little bit. But I can say Tutor.com has conducted independent studies with third parties to prove the efficacy of our program with some of our other partner districts in other areas. And we achieved ESSA Level 2 success in impacting students' grades, impacting reduced absenteeism, and various other metrics, bringing D's up to C's, for example. So there is a slide on there with some of those key findings from that study, and we certainly could provide the full study if you are so interested.
That study is for New Hampshire or nationwide?
It is not for New Hampshire. It's for Tutor.com working with other partners, but I think it speaks to the efficacy that we are able to have. We don't have a study for New Hampshire in particular, though we would certainly be happy to work with interested districts and the DOE to establish such work.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you. Next on the list is Mark.
Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you, Senator Gray, and thank you, Senator Ennis, for presenting this bill. My name is Mark McLean. I'm the Executive Director of the New Hampshire School Administrators Association. We represent school leaders from around New Hampshire, probably in all of your districts. I'm here to let you folks know that we support this bill. We recognize that Tutor.com offers a great opportunity to students, to families, and to educators. And I'm not reading from any testimony that I'm about to submit, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions?
Yeah.
Senator Waters.
Same question. Have schools in the association done any evaluation of the effectiveness with individual students or across disciplines?
The evaluation of the effectiveness would be anecdotal in that it's connected to ongoing classwork. And when you look at effectiveness of any sort of educational initiative, whether or not it's going to be something on a standardized test, whether it's going to be a body of evidence through a series of assessments, or whether it's going to be impact on individual grades and student worth, it's really hard to cull out what's causal and what's just corollary. So we recognize it as a great opportunity for students. We recognize it as something in a repertoire of supports. And as we try to personalize and individualize education, it's something that's a tool for students and for families and for educators. So to pull that out on a New Hampshire level, we haven't done that. And I would defer to the experts that have done that in other areas. And we would certainly partner with that to help provide any information.
Thank you.
Senator Rosenblatt.
Thank you. In my district of Nashua, students have access to this, which they use mostly for SAT prep, according to the superintendent. But they also have access to a nonprofit, similar kind of service. Do you have information on how your service does versus for example, Khan Academy, which is the nonprofit that Nashua kids have access to?
Well, thank you for that question. Just for clarity, I don't work for tutor.com. I work for the New Hampshire School Administrators Association. So I think specific questions about the efficacy of their service is better suited to the folks at tutor.com. I recognize that they employ over 4,000 skilled tutors, and Khan Academy are pre-programmed videos, essentially. So I think the personalization would be different, but relative to any sort of comparative study, I would defer to the folks at Tutor on that.
Thank you.
Additional questions? Seeing none, thank you.
All right, thank you for your
Does the
time.
department want to speak? Oh, did you have a question? Okay, go ahead.
Melissa White, Division Director for Learner Support at New Hampshire Department of Education, and to speak to a couple of the questions that came up earlier regarding the competitive process. So the Department of Education received COVID-19 relief funds, and one of the requirements of the COVID-19 relief funds was to address learning loss. And so the department did an RFP to seek out services for an online tutoring services to help support students in addressing learning loss across the state. And so we did have a number of proposals from various vendors, and this tutor.com was the vendor that won that proposal. And so that was why they were selected for this particular program and work that we're doing across the state. So I think that was one of the questions, and then I'm here just available to answer any other questions that you might have.
Senator Bertzel.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for taking my question. Looking at the fiscal note, it says the department states the current contract with Princeton Review for tutor.com is 1.6 million. Therefore, funding in this bill is insufficient by 1,100 in 2026 and 2027 for 2,200,000. Can you explain that?
I think the original, and I could be wrong about this, but I thought the original proposal was for 500,000, so that's where the 1.1 came in. The total amount per annually that the department is paying right now is 1.6 million. I'm not sure what any future costs might be, so I can't really speak to that. I was just basing it on what the department is paying right now. So if the appropriation would be for $1 million over 2 years, that would be 500,000 per year. And if our current costs are 1.6 then per year, then it would be 1.1 million that we would be short. But then again, I because there hasn't been any talks of negotiation or anything like that, I can't say what the future cost would be. I'm just basing it on what our current costs are right now. Does that?
No, I don't. So the bill says a sum of $1 million for the biennium ending June 30th, 2027 is hereby appropriated. So if we're spending $1 million, but the contract is for 1.6
per annually, yes.
Well, the testimony from tutor.com is that there were significant startup costs, okay? So again, whether that gets us down to the $500,000 a year, which I'm seeing a lot of head shake in the back.
Okay. Okay, that answers my question, thank you.
The question that I have is, what has the department done about putting this in as a prioritized need or a need in the state budget that's being submitted?
It was not included as a prioritized need.
Okay, additional questions from the senators? Senator Waters.
Thanks. As I was asking before, any evaluation of effectiveness that the DOE has done?
So the department has, when we're looking at our test scores, we cannot attribute specifically to usage of this particular service having any impact on our statewide assessment scores. So we don't have any data to show that the efficacy, I guess, of the product and the support services. We do have that anecdotal information that was referred to earlier. We meet bi-weekly with tutor.com to go over usage, subject areas that the students are using it in, And so we're able to get some comments from the students that are utilizing the service and how it helped them and get that feedback from them. But again, it's all anecdotal. There's no actual studies.
Thank you.
Or data.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Additional questions from the senators? Seeing none, thank you very much. We'll close the public hearing. I guess I don't have a list of people who signed up online before we'll assume that no one did sign up. If not, we'll put it in the minutes of the meeting. Right now, that was the only people who signed up, so have testified, so we'll close the public hearing. And we'll take a motion to go into executive session. So moved. We have a motion in several seconds to go into executive session. So all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. We are in executive session. No, if she's there, that'd be fine. But since we changed the rules, we're good. The first bill, we've got two bills that we heard in previous sessions, Senate Bill 20 and Senate Bill 35. And looking for a motion on Senate Bill 20.
Move to approve.
Oh, she actually had her hand up before you.
Sorry.
Yes?
But I would cede to the majority leader.
I didn't hear it.
Well, it hasn't been made yet.
Yeah.
All right. She is deferring to you, Senator Rowe.
And I'll defer.
All right, fine.
Okay.
I move on to pass on Senate Bill 20.
OTP. Senator Rosenbaum, seconded by Senator Barcel. Okay. Again, with the caveat on all of these that anything that we do pass will get tabled, not that it could get tabled, but it probably will get tabled, or at least the motion will be made to table it. May get that worded correctly so that it can be included in the budget.
Mr. Chair, will you be able to speak on these bills before you move to table them?
We will be voting on them, so there will be someone taking them out. In fact, I was going to take both of them out since it was the first, and then they will be voted on in the Senate as best I know, unless an intervening motion comes, and then they will be, I will stand and make the motion to table after the vote, before the third reading motion.
So the same as 2 years ago.
Same as we always do.
So yes, you can speak to it.
But now we have a consent calendar.
This won't go on consent. Because it
If
can't
it,
go to table.
if you don't want it on the consent calendar, then we won't put it on the consent calendar.
Because we have a motion to table afterwards, so we have to move to approve it, then move to table it. If it's on consent calendar, you can't.
The motion for consent, I believe, includes the third reading motion, okay?
Oh, okay.
So it would already be moved on the third reading motion, so anything that you want to table, you would need not to put on consent. Okay?
So the House has a rule, as we all know, that appropriations and fees don't go on consent.
And we had that until this year.
We did.
Yes.
Change the rules.
You voted on it.
I like the idea of a consent calendar, but
Well,
not
again,
every bill we do has an appropriation or a fee.
Only, it only takes one senator
I
to
know.
take something off the consent. Okay, and that was the feeling when the rule to allow us to put things on the consent calendar was there, okay? Certainly, I believe that will be used when we get to bills that are referred to us as a second committee. That's when putting them on a consent calendar will make a lot of sense, okay? But for these appropriation bills, Since they have to be tabled, and we don't want them to get a third reading motion before they're tabled, then the procedure would be not to put them on consent. Okay? That being said, we have a motion of ought to pass on Senate Bill 20. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and it will not go on consent, and Senator Gray will take that one out. Senate Bill 35. That is the rail trail.
I'll move on to pass.
Do I have Senator Ennis, who moves ought to pass? Senator Rosenbaum, seconds.
And we have an amendment.
We have an amendment?
We do,
Wait,
but I want
we can't.
to,
Well,
I don't know.
all right, parliamentary
Okay.
position that we're in, okay? We have a motion of ought to pass, and a motion to amend it can be made on the floor. Okay, and if that is what you're intending on doing, that's fine. But if you want that amendment discussed in finance first, then we should rescind the motion of ought to pass right now and go back to, it's still on our agenda for next meeting.
I think we can, well, let's just see. I can rescind the ought to pass for a moment. We might end up right back there.
Okay, and you take back your second?
So the amendment is one that suggests maybe toll tax credits can be used to fund this. I'm not convinced that's the way to go. I'm not convinced it isn't.
Did you check with DOT to see
So-
if they could?
DOT probably isn't gonna like that.
So let me go back into this one again, okay? Since it is more than likely, or since I'm going to make a motion to table it, if it does pass the Senate,
Right.
then there will be plenty of time before we get to House Bill 2
To amend.
to do whatever we want with the language that we would need to put in to fund this.
Yep.
So if you'd like to discuss it here, I'm perfectly willing to leave it, on the table here, or I should say, on the list. But if you want to do that amendment as a portion, if we have the money, okay?
Right.
If we don't have the money, it's gonna be a moot point no matter where it is.
That's right.
So
So,
senators?
Mr. Chair, my preference would be to pass and table today. And then at a later opportunity, should we decide it's the best way to go, introduce the amendment. I think that makes the most sense. I have not vetted it as much as I would like, and I'm not convinced it's the best solution. So that's my preference. However, if Senator Rosenwald has other perspective.
Well, we did check, LBA checked with DOT. And there's basically big $55 million of toll credits that are not yet accounted for. And so my thinking, working with Senator Ennis last week, was it's a way to get this over to the House, this project that everybody, almost everybody likes, without a general fund spend.
Yes.
But there was a bill last year, and I think it's been reintroduced to use the toll credits for erecting barriers in areas where there is a significant sound problem and the population doesn't meet the criteria that we have for erecting them.
That is true, but they're supposed to be used for transportation, and a sound barrier doesn't move. So a person on a rail trail moves. So to me, that is transportation. I mean,
It's not up to us to determine that, isn't it up to DOT or the feds to determine what's the total credits can be
I-
used for?
It's 228A.
So let me say this, okay? I think that if we accept Senator Ennis's motion of ought to pass, and we second it, and allow Senator Ennis to bring in the bill, or the amendment that says roll of toll credits, then it gets tabled. I think that we're in as good a place as we can be. The only addition to that would be to pass it, whether with the amendment or not, and actually send it to the House would be the only way we could get them to do that. But it can all be done as part of the discussion on House Bill 1 and 2. So, Senator Waters.
Chairman, I think that is the way to go.
Yeah.
I do think as this is getting discussed with DOT, I think we need to check whether or not we can use toll credits to match CMAQ.
That's a good question,
And
because
I'm
we
not sure-
learned last
I'm
year.
not sure that we can.
We could
So
use ARPA
for
funds.
this point in
Yeah.
time, I
Yeah.
think that passing it and tabling it,
I think
and
that's a good
then
idea.
later on seeing what is possible there, because the
Yep.
toll credits are kind of funny as to what we can and can't use them for.
Yep, okay.
Thank you, Mr.
like that
Chairman.
idea. The
Okay.
amendment's drafted, so it'll be ready if it's the right way to go. But I'll do some.
Well, you may need it to be redrafted if it's gonna be a floor amendment.
Probably.
Right next week. This week.
It,
It gives me a couple days. It's enough time.
yep.
Again, we could pass it and table it as it is and then deal with the toll credits when we get to the budget. We don't have to put that in the bill now.
Right.
You can find out, chase it down on whether or not toll
Right.
credits can or cannot be used. And if we decide it can be used when we get
Then we do it
HB2,
later.
we can put it in with the toll credit being the revenue stream for it.
Yeah, okay. That's true too. Very good point. Yep, okay.
Okay,
Let's
the
pass it out.
parliamentary place that we are right now is I have a motion from Senator Ennis to ought to pass. And I'm told by I'm told by Tammy that I actually don't need a second because we don't second things up in the regular chamber.
Oucher.
So, if there's anybody that wants to say I second, that's fine. But if not, we're gonna proceed to the vote.
I think Senator Rosenwald said it earlier, yeah.
Well, she
may not want to
rescinded
without the
that.
amendment, though.
She was,
I'm gonna vote for it.
We don't need a second, let's just vote.
and for procedural, I'll second it just to make sure that our,
We're friends on this.
I think that, you know, she has a key to my office, you know, what can I say? All right,
She knows where the bodies are buried too.
further discussion, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
Thank you.
The ayes have it, it will not go on consent,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the navigation you provided there.
and I'm taking it out. Now, we heard 4 bills today.
Yeah.
If the Republicans want to take a brief caucus to talk about anything, approving any of them, we got one I can't. You can go.
All right.
Do you guys want to have a brief caucus on the 4 of them?
Sure, I'd like to get it all done, we can get money done if we have consensus.
All right, we are in recess for 6 minutes. I'll call us back out of recess. We will not be taking up Senate Bill 114 nor Senate Bill 117 today. Those will be deferred until later. We will look at Senate Bill 64 and 113. Do I have a motion on Senate Bill 64?
Mr. Chair, move auto pass.
Second.
We have the prime sponsor and Senator Rosenwald ought to pass. Discussion?
Great bill.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. And Senator Lang,
Yes, please, I'll take that out.
you are the prime sponsor.
Do we want that on consent?
No, because you're going to table.
Pass and table.
Okay.
All of these are going to be passing tables. It's, a motion to table will be made. Okay. Senate Bill 113, that's Health and Human Services.
Ought to pass.
Senator Barcel and Senator Rosenwald. Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. The ayes have it. And Senator Barcel will take this one out. And unless somebody tells you different, you really want to make the tabling motion, I will do all of the tabling motions, so just.
Second.
We have a motion to come out of executive session. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. We are out of executive session. Our business today being complete, we are adjourned.
I'm not going to fight you for a table.
They don't usually get you into